been called many things: the bend-wing bird, whistling death, the super Stuka, hose nose, and the sweetheart of Okinawa. But to those who built, flew, and fought in the most recognizable fighter aircraft of World War II, it was simply known as the F-4U Corsair. This edition of Focus will take to the skies in a salute to the men and women who made a difference during one of our country's darkest hours. For 3 days in June 2005, the skies over Connecticut buzzed with the sound of vintage warplanes, while those on the ground had a chance to reminisce and share their stories during the Corsairs over Connecticut Veterans Salute held at Sikorsky Memorial Airport in Stratford. Commemorating the 60th anniversary of the end of the Second World War, Corsairs over Connecticut was a unique opportunity to showcase Connecticut's aviation heritage, bringing together veteran pilots, former war workers, and the general public in a rare and unprecedented celebration set on the grounds of the factory that turned out thousands of Corsair variants during the war.
Corsairs over Connecticut is part of the Veterans Salute, which is, it's only one part of a multifaceted event, which includes the Barnum Festival Parade, which is a salute to veterans, the Wing Ding in the park down at Seaside Park. There's a pilot symposium, there's a military ball dance that's happening on Saturday night. So it's a myriad of things that are happening in the area that weekend. This just happens to be the air display portion of it. And it's really designed to honor World War II veterans, but not only the veterans, but also the people who lived and worked at that time to help build Connecticut's war industry.
A recreation of the Chance-Vought Corsair factory, along with historical reenactors, military vehicles, static aircraft displays, flying demonstrations, and simulated test flights gave visitors an opportunity to get a sense of what it took to make Connecticut's legendary Corsair a reality.
The veterans will also be here. We've got members of the Black Sheep Squadron who are coming. One of them was Pappy Boyington's wingman. We've got 7 Corsairs coming in that are going to be part of this factory, and then we're going to have a war bond rally halfway through each day where we actually have little speeches about everything. Matter of fact, one pilot, Yogi Irwin, had his tail blown off on landing. A bomb went off under the airplane, and the entire tail's gone, and everybody thought he was killed, and he lived. And he wants to come here and thank everybody who built that airplane because it saved his life.
The right plane at the right time. The Corsair is regarded by many as one of the greatest combat aircraft ever built, and marks a moment in state history when Connecticut was at the heart of the nation's arsenal of democracy.
First of all, for the younger people, they only think of Sikorsky as helicopters. But here we're going to show the early years of his Russian years and his fixed-wing activity before the helicopter. Secondly, a lot of people will be coming as children of workers that worked in the factory right across the way here where the Vought Sikorsky company was located. And people are going to look for his history of my father and my mother worked in here. And we will have some Vought Sikorsky news of 1941 and 42 as handouts where people can see what went on.
Recently designated as Connecticut's official state aircraft, the inverted gull-winged F-4U Corsair is a unique icon, designed, built, and tested entirely in Connecticut.
On the 24th of March 1941, I hired in at Sikorsky and Vought. I was an engineer. I did some design work on the wings and the engine. I got into the test programs. So when this invitation came to the boss of the Vought Aircraft Industries in Dallas, Texas, he said, "Hank, you go." So gratifying to see that the airplane that did so well in the Pacific, better than any other aircraft in all the services, that it be chosen to be the state airplane. That's wonderful, wonderful.
Powered by a 2,000 horsepower, 18-cylinder Pratt & Whitney engine, spinning a 13-foot Hamilton standard propeller, and manufactured for the Navy at Vought Sikorsky, the Corsair quickly became the most capable carrier-based fighter bomber of the war, and singularly represents the determination, skill, and sacrifice of Connecticut's people and industry, both then and now.
I think that most of the people today don't realize how much progress in construction was done in war years. We didn't start early as we should have, but we sure made it up when we got it into production.
And made it up they did, producing 5 Corsairs every working shift, 24 hours a day, with no vacations, long hours, rationing, and only 1 day off a week.
Every Thursday between 1944 and 45, they would fly formation 4 Corsairs, real low over the, and they had patriotic music playing for the morale of the people and putting it out. But it's a proud feeling having the plane from Connecticut, because Connecticut did so much to the war effort. And who did it? The old timers, and primarily here for the factory here, 9/10 of the people who worked on it were women. Rosie the Riveter, them people, they're the ones that really should get credit.
Of the 12,571 Corsairs produced in Connecticut between 1941 and 1952, only 90 still exist intact. And of this number, only 25 are left that can still fly.
It's nostalgic just to see this airplane after all these years, that they still have one that flies. But it's been a long time since I sat in one, and it was a thrill just to sit in it again and reminisce. And it's surprising how fast things come to you. But I have no regrets. I had good fun flying the airplane. I was proud and privileged to fly the airplane. In fact, my father worked in this factory during the war as a machinist while I was the pilot. He was very proud of it.
The fastest warplane in its time, the 5-ton Corsair was capable of reaching 400 miles an hour in level flight and carried Navy and Marine Corps pilots through 64,000 missions between 1943 and 1945.
The first flight in the Corsair was, from climbing aboard, which was not easy compared to the other airplanes. Once you were cleared for takeoff and got out on the runway, and so pour the power and go. And the airplane would really take off and get down. Brass taxiing was about 140 knot climb, and one turn around the field and you're up 6,000 to 7,000 feet. I was amazed how well it climbed.
This is the only airplane I ever flew, only Corsair airplane I ever flew. I flew that little guy over there, DA-1. And that's what last airplane we flew before we got into the Corsair. And when we got into the Corsair, it had a 2,000 horsepower engine, and that had a 1,200 horsepower engine. So it was a great difference, I'll tell you.
It's what I used to call a fingertip airplane. Where some of the others were a little heavy-handed on the controls. This, you could rock the wings, just take your finger back and forth on the control stick. You get into high speed, that's different, and then you're using some missile, being careful how you do things.
One of the things that happened that was very interesting here, I saw Lindbergh take off with a Corsair with 3 drop tanks, and the next place he landed was Salt Lake City, Utah, and that was when he was going out to show the Marines how to get long-range cruise with the Corsairs. Pratt & Whitney people, what he was doing, he was running high manifold pressure and low RPM, and the Pratt & Whitney people said he was going to ruin the engine, but what happened is the guys were running out of gas before they got back to the island, and then they'd ruin everything. And he did the same thing with the P-38 Army people. He showed them how to fly Corsairs, and he flew combat missions with both airplanes in civilian clothes.
In the years immediately following World War II, the development of jet engine fighter aircraft took center stage. But because of the overwhelming successes of the Corsair and the pilots who flew them, the Navy and Marine Corps continued to use the durable plane as a ground support fighter through the end of the Korean War.
One of the fellows had asked me, he said, well, what was the last time you flew one of these things? So we dragged out my Navy logbook, and it happened to be the last time was the 5th of June in 1955. So it was just 50 years ago.
In an effort to preserve Connecticut's aviation and industrial past, Connecticut Corsair was formed with the purpose of restoring an F-4U Corsair to flying condition.
When the Corsair was designed and built, there weren't any computers. There were slide rules and paper and pencil. And the men and the women who designed and built this airplane were brilliant. And the technology that was used to put this airplane together is still impressive today. That can't be lost. That history can't be lost. That technology can't be lost. And the Corsair is such a unique aircraft and so interesting to people that it's the magnet that draws people in. Kids come up and ask, how does this work and how do the wings fold and the hydraulics? So you can look at the Corsair as a magnet to draw kids into math, science, and engineering.
Of course, finding original parts for the restoration effort is not an easy task, as many Corsairs were broken down into scrap metal, while others were simply pushed off the deck of aircraft carriers and lost at sea.
A lot of times we have to make it. We reverse engineer off an existing part. And again, that's an opportunity where we're trying to get school kids involved. For instance, if we have a part but we have no drawing, we'll hand the part to a class as a class project and have a drafting class render a drawing off of it. Or if we have a drawing but it's hard to read, perhaps they can go in and render a cleaner version of the drawing for us. So once the drawings are done, with the technology that's here in Connecticut, having parts manufactured through computer-aided programs and design programs should be the fairly simple part, straightforward part.
Whether used in an educational setting or as an icon to promote Connecticut's history and present business opportunities, the Corsair has been given a new life and one last mission objective.
What's really important about the Corsair and preserving the history is to pass that history on to the next generation. And again, to use the hardware, use the aircraft as a magnet to draw people in and to understand what war is, what the struggles were of World War II and subsequent generations, and maybe it will even help to put the current conflicts that we're experiencing into perspective.
The younger generation, the younger kids, just to take a piece of history that they probably don't know about 60 years ago, that these guys fought and died for our freedom and the soil that we stand on right now.
It was a wonderful thing that we were able to have what we did with our Corsairs and our wonderful men that dedicated their lives to it. It was a great time, and I was always so proud. I'm proud today and choked up because many nice memories and sad memories. We lost pilots and men that were servicing them, but it was a wonderful thing that we had this to win our war.
The dedicated men and women who designed, built, tested, and flew the F-4U Corsair, and those who keep the dream alive today by introducing this legendary plane to a new generation, capture the true spirit of flight.
It's very, very important for the younger generation to at least have that touch of history, because in 20 years you won't be able to do that. We'll always have Corsairs. We won't have any veterans.
For 3 days in June 2005, those of us on the ground had a chance to be a part of this dream and share in Connecticut's aviation heritage.